and welcome to the second ever episode of Showmakers. In this episode, we talk to Destin Sandlin, founder of the channel SmarterEveryDay. Destin has made videos doing everything from firing an AK-47 underwater to capture it in slow motion to starving his brain of oxygen to prove why you should put your mask on first in an airplane. He's just all around a cool guy, and we are ecstatic to have the chance to talk to him. Destin, welcome to Showmakers.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're obviously both, I think, big fans of your channel. It's one of the biggest, educational channels out there, and it has a pretty unique style. And I know Brian has also been a fan for a while, but I've watched your videos for years. I guess we were first interested in just hearing kind of a quick rundown of everything in your life leading up to starting YouTube. And also, if you're feeling ambitious, trying to answer through that why you started doing YouTube. So kind of 2 in 1.
Well, I'm going to turn the tables on you here. You know, this is your show. I don't know enough about you, and I think your listeners would want to know more about you first. We can get to that stuff later, but my thought was, you guys are engineers, right?
I'm an engineer.
So, Sam, you're not an engineer. Brian, you are.
Well, a former engineer at this point. Now I'm a YouTuber.
Oh, you're no longer an engineer?
No, I left my job to when I had 0 subscribers to start this, which was a bit of a bold move. But yeah, no, I'm no longer working in. You got to tell your story. I want to know more about your story. I don't know much about you.
Well, my story is much less interesting than quitting my job at 0 subscribers. I think most people have thought about doing YouTube at one time or another because it's pretty much a dream job. If you don't have a schedule, you just do whatever you kind of want, make videos. That pretty much sounds like travel. That sounds like a dream job. So it's kind of just a thing that a lot of people try out. And I just started because I'm interested in a lot of these things that I don't really see videos on a lot. So I kind of started out just to be able to make videos on these topics that, that don't get published as much. And I never even really thought about it being a actual kind of job. And unlike you, because Brian, you really jumped into it for the intention of it becoming a job.
Yeah.
I just went into it for the fun of it. And I started out by making like one video, did all right. A couple months later, I thought, I think I want to make a video again. Made another one. And then eventually it got into a schedule and everything and became more serious about it. So this really isn't, it's not a very interesting story. I started YouTube because I wanted to, and then it worked out. And
well, hold on. No, I don't understand. Like, you just asked me start from the moment you exited the womb to when you started YouTube, and then you're like, yeah, so I just wanted to do YouTube, so I did it. You can't have it both ways, Sam. That's not how this works.
Sure. Okay.
Let me just make this simple. How did you eat before YouTube? Let's just make this simple.
So I'm a lot younger than almost everyone. Pretty much anyone, I think, doing educational videos. I'm a lot younger than both of you. So I ate before YouTube at university, and I'm still in university. So you've never had like a in the real world job kind of thing. That's correct. I've never had a real job.
Whoa.
I worked for a while as a camp counselor, which was a very fun job.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh yeah. Well, favorite, in terms of dream jobs, it's right up there with YouTuber. But I have not had a real job. And at this point, I don't know if I actually ever will.
Really? That is strange. Yeah. So this is really strange to me. How old are you guys? Says the old man.
I'm 27.
And what about you, Sam?
I'm 19.
Oh,
wow. Okay.
I did not know you were that young. I talk to you regularly, and I didn't know you were that young. I'm learning things too, and I always feel like you're the more responsible of the two of us. I'm the one putting up poorly constructed sentences on Twitter every day, and you're the one correcting my grammar.
This is funny.
That's why I don't say that much, because I don't think I act like it.
No, definitely not.
So you guys treat YouTube in a completely different way than I did. So when I started, my goal was, just to do things for fun. I like to educate. I like to learn. And I literally wanted to get smarter every day. That's why I started. But you guys actively went after YouTube as a career, which was a completely foreign idea to me. I'm still an engineer, and I do YouTube on the side. So this is kind of interesting. So I like to. Man, that is really interesting. When did you start thinking about YouTube as a career?
For me, I mean, I think your videos were one of the first that really caught my attention on YouTube and made me think this is something I could do too. And I don't think I would ever be able to achieve the quality of videos that you do. You just have such a good cadence and personality on camera, and I don't feel like I could do that with myself. I'd like to get there. I'd like to practice towards it, but I knew I'd kind of have to go more the animation route if I wanted to achieve any sort of following on it. But do you remember, it wasn't this time last year. It was about a year and a half ago. I'd sent you my first video.
This is the airplane window video, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
So I was living in Norway at the time. So I was working in the oil and gas industry in Malaysia. And I had moved over to Norway to finish projects before leaving my job. And I did that iteration of that video, I'd say was the third or fourth. I'd done it a load of times, and I sent it to my brother and other people, and they're like, it's terrible. You cannot upload that. And then that was my final one, and I didn't show it to anyone. I'd sent it to you, and you said, yeah, put it up. And I put it up, and that got 1 million views in less than a month, I think, which was crazy.
That's how that went down?
Yeah.
You weren't going to put it up until I said put it up?
I was kind of trying to find something that I felt was good enough, because I was approaching it as a business. I didn't want to put something that wasn't up to standard of actually being able to achieve that kind of virality or success. So
you gave me a pre-look. I didn't realize that was what was happening there. Yeah, one thing that I encounter a lot is people. So the purpose of your podcast is to talk about making these things, correct? Is it? So one thing I find all the time is people will come at me and they'll say, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I want to do that." Actually, I'm going to pull up an email. I'm just going to read an email right here to you guys so that you can see how I feel about this. Okay, so this person emails me out of the blue. Hello, Destin. My name is blank, and I'm truly inspired by your videos, blah, blah, blah. I want to do my own thing. This is the name of it. This is how I'm going to do it. And then he talks and talks and talks and talks. And he says, can we collaborate? And I said, well, sir, you haven't uploaded a video yet. Yeah, but I've been thinking about doing this, and I've got some scripts, and I just responded, I really like to be the person that gives a kick in the pants to the other people so they actually will cross the threshold and do things. Did you feel that when I sent it? Our interaction
was that interaction. It was a very simple interaction. It was literally, I sent you the video and asked you what you thought, and you just said, put it up. I think it was a single sentence, go for it.
So this, I'm looking back on what this guy sent me, and he's talking about how he's got all the right software and he's got the right cameras, and I sent a 2-word reply to him, and I only do that. I usually send out long replies when I respond to emails, but
I find it incredible that you actually put the time, because you're incredibly busy. You work a job, you have YouTube, you have your family life and everything, and you go to the trouble of replying to these huge long emails, and I'm starting to get a lot of them now, and I couldn't imagine.
But you can change a life, if you do that. If you take 3 minutes of your life and you invest it in another person's, then you can change the trajectory of that person's life in a way that will multiply much more than that 3 minutes. Yeah. And so this guy, he's going on, and I sent a 2-word reply: excuses, man. That's all I said. And he replies to this another really long email, and I just let that internal dialogue just happen in his brain. He knows what I said is, oh, wow, excuses? I could actually just click upload right now, and it would be done. Yeah. And then his reply is really big and long, and the next reply, I'm enjoying this thread, kind of analyzing how I do this. He says all this stuff, and then I say, be a doer, not a talker. Yeah. And then I get a lot of it. And then finally I just say, whatever, you just need to upload. And then finally, he ends with, this was a really big inspirational moment for me. And I didn't do anything. I just said, do it.
It's important to have someone to cut you out of that thinking process sometimes.
I think so. I think we get into feedback. We get into...
Pressing upload is a scary thing as well, especially when I still have the fear now, and I haven't been doing it that long to be fair, but I still have a fear when I'm putting up a video, like, is this going to do really poorly? Are people going to hate it? But on your first video, it feels like such a bigger deal. Like, it feels like the start. Well, for me, it felt like a start of something. And
okay, so when me and well, I guess I should say when Matt and I started the podcast that we're doing together, Matt Whitman, he's a guy that has a YouTube channel. When we started doing a podcast together, I found that the podcast was harder to start than the YouTube channel.
Really?
The YouTube channel, I just said, hey, how to light a bonfire with rockets, rock and roll, let's do this. And I uploaded it. And then with the podcast, I'm like, this is a deeper thing because we're trying to connect at the heart level with people.
Right.
And so we actually recorded one or two that we didn't release because we were bad at it.
I'm sure we're still at that stage. We get better as we go along. But like that's just the nature of everything. Even with the videos, I look back at some of my videos like they were poor. Like my Wright Brother video, I'm just not a fan of, and I want to remove it, but I think it's important to have those steps there. Is like, look where I came from. Like having that kind of. I heard this great thing. Someone referred to it as the reverse gap, where instead of like looking forward at where you want to go, and that can be quite a stressful process. Like it seems like such a huge leap that you need to make, and instead start looking at where you came from like a year ago, and that's far more inspiring and kind of gives you more like energy to work towards what you want.
I don't know. I think I'm a little different. Like I don't see if our life is a wheel that's rolling on the ground, the point that we're living in right now, the moment is the point at which the tangent touches the ground. Or you get what I'm trying to say.
Sure, yeah.
And so I don't really look ahead or look behind. I try to spend a lot of time where I'm at. And I think that's what Smarter Every Day is all about. I just try to move forward. I remember when I learned differential calculus, and I learned about taking the derivative of a function. And I said, you can take a derivative of a function and it's either positive or negative. And so my intent, just with my life in general, is whenever I take the derivative of what I'm doing at that moment, I want it to be positive. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This got so deep so fast.
It's like we have all sorts of questions we want to ask, and it's going in a much better direction. I like this.
Well, I mean, think about it. Like, for instance, I went to the gym today. So, I got healthy. I guess about 4 years ago. I was like, I've got children. I should get healthy, and so I started working out and all that good stuff, and I started dropping weight. And then in the wintertime, I got really busy, and I started putting on weight. Now, I'm not like a fatty or anything like that, but I started gaining weight, and then I realized, at somewhere in there was a point of inflection, and I changed, right? And it doesn't really change, it doesn't change in just one point. It's a function. So it starts by slowing down your movement in the correct direction, and then it slowly, at some point, you hit that point of inflection, and then it moves the other way. So it's actually the second derivative that you got to look out for. You guys know calculus, right?
I am incredibly rusty, but I am vaguely following what you're saying with the derivatives.
You take the first derivative, you can get the slope of the tangent line. You take the second derivative, you can find the points of inflection. And so it's those points of inflections that you got to look out for, because when you find those points of inflection, it's like, whoa, the trend is changing. Right. It's not like I'm changing, like I decided to be a whatever negative person. It's like the trend is, I'm being less aggressive at that stuff. And it applies to every different aspect of your life, I think. Like I want to dad really hard today. My kids are in the other room, and they know as soon as we finish here, we get to go do something together. And so I want to like invest in them. So I want that trend of dadding hard to go up, if that makes any sense.
Like I find it incredible that you manage to balance all of that though, and like you seem to be doing an excellent job of it. You're doing a full-time job. You have one of the largest YouTube channels like especially educational. You've one of the largest educational channels on YouTube. I think only Vsauce is bigger than you, and you have
Michael's awesome.
I think he's amazing, and you have a family that you are an excellent father to from what it looks like.
Yeah, you don't get to see, like the other night, my 2-year-old who is in the terrible twos at the moment. We were all sitting at the table and she just starts screaming and we're all trying to figure out why she's screaming. And finally, I just made the executive decision. I was like, here's what we're going to do, guys. We can have 6 sad people or 1 mad person. So I'm going to pick her up. And so I picked up her chair and her high chair and everything and just took her to her room and just let her scream and shut the door. I'm like, let's have dinner. So you don't get to see those moments. But
you do post quite a lot of them to Snapchat, though. Your Snapchat keeps me entertained quite a lot.
I actually do, don't I? Yeah. So you've seen her cry. You get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how. Like my only interaction with kids now recently is my brother had a kid, probably a bit older than your youngest, and like he lives in North Carolina. So I was visiting there over Thanksgiving, and the kid just started like bawling because I didn't let him like flush the toilet. I just couldn't figure out. I was like, why? Like you can flush it now. I was like, no, I wanted to flush the poo. I was like, like
my favorite moment is when they cry because you won't let them kill themselves.
What?
Yeah, they're like, hey Dad, I want to go play in the street.
Oh, okay.
No, you can't play in the street. And they just start screaming. Like for me, around the 2 to 3 year old region, it's like a long series of keeping an idiot from hurting themselves. You know, I love my children; they're beautiful people, and you know they're not idiots. But at that stage, you just don't have good judgment, and so it's all about trying to prevent them from hurting themselves. Yeah. It's really quite funny. So, yeah, I don't know. Kids are a blast. They make life way more interesting. Kids are my long game, by the way. Like, you know, I try to get smarter every day myself, but I'm going to die at some point. And so I'm trying to invest and pour into the life of my children because, you know, they're going to be the legacy. They're going to be what takes these ideals forward.
This episode of Showmakers was made possible by Backblaze. Backblaze is the absolute best way to back up your computer data. Both Brian and I use it and love it. You just download their software, install it on your computer, and then it works continuously to back up your data in the safe and secure cloud. If you ever lose it, all you have to do is log into your account at backblaze.com and download your data, or they can even send it to you on a physical drive. What's great is that Backblaze is giving you guys a 15-day fully featured free trial by signing up at the link backblaze.com/showmakers. If you lose your data in those 15 days, they'll still give it back to you for free. Those 15 days are 15 days of the peace of mind of knowing that no matter what happens to your computer, your photos, your documents, all your work, all your data is safe. Once again, that's backblaze.com/showmakers for 15 free days of knowing that your data is safe.
I think I saw on your website that you said that Smarter Every Day is essentially their college fund, right?
Yeah, that's why I started it. Well, okay, it's a little different than that. So I started Smarter Every Day just because I like making videos and I like to be creative, and it was a creative outlet. And then one day, I call it the strawberry shampoo moment. I was in the shower, and my wife was like out in the bathroom brushing her teeth. And I said, oh man. She's like, what? I was like, I just figured it out. And I had strawberry shampoo in my head, in my hair. And she's like, what? And I was like, I'm going to use this weird YouTube thing to pay for the kids' college. And she's like, that's nice, honey. And she kept brushing her teeth. But like, that was the moment where I was like, we could actually do this. Like at that point in time, YouTube was still owned by Google. There was no way to monetize videos, but I saw that there was some kind of value there. I didn't know what it was.
What videos had you uploaded at that point?
Well, at that point I had uploaded like how to light a bonfire with rockets.
Right.
There's several other ones. I had done some videos on some slow motion stuff, but one of them was, man, I don't even know. Am I allowed to Google while we talk?
The chicken head tracking video was your first kind of big viral success, wasn't it?
Yeah, it actually was. And it was Michael from Vsauce that posted that in a leanback, which is something that he called. Okay. He called his leanbacks way back in the days, back when YouTube made playlists, and he had a way to get people to do a bunch of stuff. I'm looking right now. So, oh wow, here's one. Godzilla Army arrives at my door. This was me exploring with stop motion. I had a little Godzilla doll. I had something called the Jump Battle. Yeah, I've got stuff on here that's like completely embarrassing that nobody has watched. Look, I'm looking at one right now. 3,000 views on Smarter Every Day. Kayak time lapse with original music. Gator Beavers is my sister made a song, and I rigged up this was before GoPros. I went to the local auto parts store and I welded up an attachment for an old HD Handycam. No, not HD. DV, an old DV Handycam. Attached it to the back of the kayak and then went out in the local creek until we saw what we thought were gators, but they were actually beavers. And so stuff like that. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I did. I just really like to create and, do things with the visual arts. And then there's this really clear moment where I started actually teaching stuff. There's this animal survival technique that I thought was really neat, so I uploaded that. And then the strawberry shampoo moment happened right at a video called Share the Love. Share the Love was like my most valiant attempt at stop motion, and I created these sunflowers that grew via stop motion.
I think I've seen this, yeah.
You've seen that? Nobody's seen this.
I mean, I think I am a big fan.
Oh, whatever, dude. Whatever.
Like I told you before that I basically studied aeronautical engineering because of your helicopter videos.
Well, because helicopters are awesome, aren't they?
Yeah, it's incredible. Like,
Did you enjoy your studies?
Oh, I loved it. Like, for us, it was a bit more plane focused. Obviously, like most of the aeronautical stuff. In Ireland, it tends to be quite plane focused since we have Ryanair and everything. But
are you a pilot?
No, I really want to start getting lessons though, but I can't afford that at this time. You're getting pilot lessons at the moment.
Excuses, man. Excuses, man.
It's a pretty good excuse if you can't afford it though.
You're buying a new car.
You're telling me right now. You don't have $200 to go take a familiarization flight in an airplane. Is that what you're telling me?
I guess, but like over the long run, is it not far more? Because I have had one lesson, and it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I loved it so much, like just flying over my.
Oh yeah, we should definitely not replicate that then, because it was it was the most incredible $200 I've ever spent, which means I'm never going to do it again.
When I did this lesson,
you got to do it.
To be fair, I was unemployed and it was a gift from my father, and I asked them about like the prices, and I was like, I really want to do this, and it costs like how many you have to do, like 100 hours in the air before you can get your license or something like that, right?
Oh, it's 40 in America. Wow, 100?
I'm guessing. I think it's more than 40 though in Ireland, and you have to pay for your fuel and the lessons and everything else. I think it would have ended up costing me 50, 60 grand just to get a license. And then
it's a lot of money.
Like it just wasn't feasible. Like it definitely is a life goal. And I like saving certain things for later in life. And like I think it's nice to have things to look forward to as well.
That's an interesting perspective on that. I usually just push the throttle down as hard as possible.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Maybe I should save some things. It's a really good. Yeah, I'll just save learning another language for later in life. But it might be harder then. How many languages do you speak, Sam?
2.
What are they?
English and French.
Oh wow, that's cool.
And drunk Scottish too.
You speak French well?
I'm conversationally fluent
in French.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's cool.
Yeah.
I know like French fries and French dressing. That's about it.
So you don't speak any second language?
I speak a little bit of Spanish. Okay. But I don't know how to conjugate verbs and things like that. But you can drop me off anywhere in South America, and I could probably muddle through and make it to wherever I need to go.
That's the important thing.
Unless, because I think Portuguese and Spanish are close enough where if you drop me in Brazil, I might be able to make it out.
I really want to learn Spanish at the moment. I think it would be really cool. I speak the most useless second language in the world, being Irish, and even then, I used to be fluent. Like I went to a school where we weren't allowed to speak English. Like we had to speak Irish in school, and back then my Irish was excellent. But I haven't had an excuse to speak it in the last like 5-6 years, so it's kind of gradually faded. But it's all the connections are still in there. I just have to cut the grass,
wrestle them out. Can you teach me some Irish?
What would you like to say?
I would like to say
keep it simple because my Irish is
it's more
bad
difficult to fly in Ireland than America.
My Irish is very rusty now. It's easier to fly in America.
Excuses.
It's not an excuse. I'm trying to think it out, man. Tá sé níos éisce eitiil America ná era. Éireann.
Oh wow! It's very different. It's not a romantic language at all, is it?
No, it's the Gaelic language. So there's Irish and Scottish, and they're the only like surviving Gaelic languages, I think. But
I'd like to dispute that actually.
Go for it.
There's Breton, which does.
You said surviving.
Which no, it has over 1,000 native speakers.
Okay, that's not a lot though.
In Brittany and France, sure, but in Brittany in France, which going back to me speaking French is where I lived for a while in France.
Okay,
but it's basically Old Irish since the Irish came down. Actually, was it? No, it might have been the Scots. I forget. One of them came down and spread their language. But anyway,
I imagine it's quite different though.
It sounds actually not very different from what you just said, but I don't.
Okay.
I really.
I'd
have no
imagine.
idea, so I don't,
yeah. I'd imagine it sounds quite similar. Like I mean, with Irish and Scottish, I will start talking about Irish forever. So feel free to stop me because I'm quite proud of my native language.
That's good.
Like it's so important. It's your national identity. In the end of the day. Like I'd hate to see that language die out, and the country's been making such huge efforts to try and make it more accessible in the daily life, so it's not like irrelevant. And I think one of our best national broadcasters actually, and they do it through Irish, and they just released a kind of Planet Earth type show done completely through Irish, and it's incredible. Like our main TV broadcaster has never released something so well shot. It's really, really cool to see.
That's cool. So why is that national identity important to you?
Well, isn't national identity important to everyone? Like it's where you're from. It's where you grew up. Like it's important to have that connection to your ancestors and everything else. I think this is something that runs quite deep with Irish people in general, that you need to have that kind of connection to what your ancestors went through to understand your own culture currently. And I think like the Irish people are quite connected to the suffering of like previous generations, and I think that's quite important to us. And I think for me, Irish is part of that. I think like there's so much emotion in the Irish language, and like English is great. I had put this on Twitter recently. Hank Green had asked, "Do you think the world would be a better place or better off if everyone spoke the same language?" Which I think is a very interesting question, but I voted yes, and I felt very like conflicted on that because I love my native language. I wish more people spoke it, but I am very glad my first language is English because it's just so much more useful, and it allows us to travel to America and England, and jobs come to Ireland very easily. And like I lived in Malaysia for 3 years, and same kind of deal there, ex-British colony. Most people speak English there, and it helps the country so much. Like.
I also had like a conflicted yes on that Hank Green poll, again for the same reasons, because even though national identity is so important, communication has been like so important through world history for establishing relations and spreading ideas and technology, and that would all been sped up. But also, of course, language is a huge part of culture, but it's also not everything. There's huge differences between Scotland and Ireland and England and the US and Australia and all those English speaking countries. And just look at the French speaking, France versus all the former French colonies and stuff. Huge culture differences.
Mm-hmm. Please forgive my ignorance. I have a question about the relationship between, Ireland and Scotland and all that. What is the stereotype over there? Like here in Alabama, we're stereotypically, the dumb people. Everybody in the nation looks down at us in Mississippi, and we embrace that and we accept that, and we get it. They're not here; they don't know what it's like. But what is it like in Ireland and Scotland? Is it what's the relationship like? Is it contentious, or is it, admirable, or?
Do you mean between Ireland and Scotland? Like, how do we look at each other?
Yeah.
I think we're buddies.
Brothers?
We're very similar. I think it's Irish culture is more similar to Scottish culture than, Scottish or Irish culture is to English culture.
Absolutely. Like, we're both Celtic.
Yeah.
We're both Celtic. I think that's the main thing. Like, the English and Welsh didn't come from that same kind of culture. And a lot of Scottish people, like the majority of the people who settled in Ireland when Britain invaded, for lack of a better word, were Scottish. So the people up north, a lot of their like accent and everything else is influenced by the Scottish settlers. So like we're fairly heavily intertwined, but our cultures are very similar. We've got the same kind of humor and probably like drinking a bit too much and everything else.
It's all the drinking cult.
You have the same livers.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a bad thing for, like, when you say people like have that stereotype about people from Alabama being stupid. I think a lot of people have that stereotype of Irish people being drunkards, but we almost live up to it at times. And if there's any Irish people listening to this, they'll probably get really annoyed, but I hate that part of the Irish culture. Like, I hate that so many people live up to it and they kind of embrace that, like, oh, we're so much fun when we get drunk and all that. And I feel it holds the country back a little bit. I mean, recently there was a video that came out from a show called Nationwide, and it was filmed 20 years ago or something, and it was just a picture or a video of a mother with a baby on her lap in a bar, in a pub, just feeding him Guinness, just like pouring it down his throat. And the baby was loving it, but the whole country thought it, well, not the whole country, a lot of people like me found it outrageous, but a lot of people thought it was hilarious and thought it was great. And I was like, what on earth? Like, why are we celebrating this? It was on national news, and there was like hashtag pint baby and everything else. I find that very damaging. I think our country would be far better off if we didn't embrace it so much.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if we embrace the things that, push each other forward, and if we strive to sharpen each other, I think we're in a better place. And I don't know. That's why I answer those emails you were asking earlier. Why do you take the time to do that? Because if if somebody emails you, do you get emails often from people? Occasionally.
A lot of the time, though, it's people asking to do homework, basically asking you to do their homework. And those ones I just ignore completely, because I find someone sending it to my business email, like, when it's very clearly an attempt just for me to like do the part of their homework they couldn't do, I don't want to put the time into that. I think it's just trying to take advantage or something. I'm not quite sure. That's obviously not their intention, but I have got one or two emails from people and have replied, but I don't have the energy that you have. You have an incredible amount of energy to do all these things.
I don't know about that, but let's just deconstruct that for a second. If a young man or a young lady reaches out to you because they want help with homework, why do you think they would do that?
Laziness? I'm not sure. Like, I assume it's laziness, but I think that's probably an unfair assumption.
You guys both make educational content. So ultimately, what's the goal of the educational content?
For me...
Is it to have a career on YouTube, or is it to actually educate?
Absolutely, to educate. To inspire as much as anything.
Sam?
My answer to this usually is I want to make a video that people watch because it's entertaining but educates through that. Like, I don't want people to watch the video because they want to be educated. I want the people to watch the video so they're entertained while watching educational content. And I know that's a different philosophy than some other educational creators.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just trying to figure out what your motivation was, because, like, with me, if the goal really is to try to, I have three things I want to do. Number one, it started out trying to, raise money for my kids' college. I think that's going to work out. Number two, I wanted to get smarter every day myself. Like, I actually, I learned the things that I'm talking about. It's me. A lot of times it's me on the video learning the thing for the first time. Number three, I want people to look at the world differently in a way that makes them motivated to do good. If I have this platform, I need to use it to do the most good I can before I die, right? And so if a kid reaches out and says, hey, my professor did this really weird thing, and I've got a question. If I don't have the time, I just won't reply. But if you can send a 2-word reply that says "excuses, man," or a 2-word reply that says, because they sought you out, you are the guy that wow, I'm going to email Brian, and a lot of times these emails aren't just written in haste. People take the time to actually write them.
I mean, I have got some essays written to me. It's incredible the amount of time some people put into this without the guarantee of getting a reply.
I understand. So if you were to take the time and invest just a little bit of time and say, hey, I can't really do your homework for you because you wouldn't learn. It's important for you to pick up the pencil and learn the things for yourself, not just to gain the knowledge, but to also understand it, because this is cool stuff that you can do with your brain. And if somebody else just does it for you, your brain's going to get more dull, but you can make your brain more awesome. And so
I think
if Brian sent them that email, right, it's another thing for their mom or their dad to say that. But if Brian said that, oh my gosh, that's Brian from Real Engineering. You know what I mean?
So literally, as we were talking about this, I got an email from Marty, a 12-year-old boy, who says he really enjoys my YouTube videos. I find them very educational, and I learn new things every time I watch one, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, but think about it. So I have a strange view of the world. I think that people were made to interact with other people. And so if we don't actually do that, it's one thing just to make something and put it on the internet and hang it out there and say, hey, look at what I made. It's quite another to take the time to invest in people's lives. And I think that's why I reached out to Matt Whitman, who I do the podcast with, No Dumb Questions. Matt's really good at that. He will invest in people's lives. And the reason I really wanted to work with him is because he was hanging things on the internet and for people to look at, but not many people were looking at them.
Right.
But he kept doing it. And so, if you had posted that first video and not many people watched it, would you have been discouraged and stopped?
No.
Maybe not.
No. I had already quit my job at that point, which was why I did it. I knew I had no choice but...
You pushed your chips to the center of the table. That's pretty impressive.
I know how my mind works. Unless I have a fire under me, I'm not going to do it. I need to have those kind of little hacks to force myself to do things. And
kind of like learning how to fly a plane, that kind of thing.
I'm the first person to admit that I can be an incredibly lazy person at times. And
I think we all can, man. That's not, you don't get to keep that attribute to yourself. I think we all do that at times.
But the email thing would come into that. But I think there's a huge amount of empathy that goes into actually replying to those, which is something you obviously have. You're a very empathetic person, but I feel like that's something you practice. Empathy isn't something you're born with. It's something you actually have to practice in order to have. So, just starting...
That's very interesting. I recently taught my kids the word... I don't know. I think this will be fun. Just 1 second. Let me see. Hang tight.
So in our last episode, we did a little competition for Fracture. We asked you to send us pictures of your pets, and you did. I really liked Ethan Clan's picture, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, of his gorgeous dog. So congratulations, Ethan. We'll be getting in contact with you soon for your free Fracture. I wanted to do something nice for my brother recently and decided to get a picture printed with Fracture. Fracture prints your pictures directly on glass, shipped complete with a backing and wall anchor or stand. They're ready to display right out of the box. Just upload your digital photo and pick your size. It's that simple. And they look really, really good too. So this week we're doing another competition. This time I want you to send us your favourite family moments on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Fisrucht, which is weird, I know, it's an Irish word, which is spelled Fiosracht. I'll be changing it to a normal word soon, hopefully. And Sam's is simply Wendover Productions. Remember to use the hashtag FractureMyMoment. The picture we like the most will be getting a free Fracture. If you'd like to make your own order with Fracture, go to fractureme.com/podcast and choose Showmakers from the drop-down menu so they know we sent you. And thank you to Fracture for making Showmakers possible.
There are people on the other side here. Will you stick your ear up to this? Sure. So there's two guys here, and they're in a different place. There's a guy named Sam and a guy named Brian. You want to say hello?
Hello.
Hiya.
Hi.
So this is my son, and we were talking about empathy. And they wanted to know what empathy is. Can you explain what empathy is?
Empathy is when you feel what other people are feeling.
What do you mean? Can you explain that?
No.
Really? But when did you learn about empathy?
4 weeks ago.
4 weeks ago? How did you learn about empathy? Do you remember?
You said I was really good at empathy.
Yeah, and then what were you trying to do? Were we trying to get better at empathy?
Yes, sir.
So Brian was sitting here talking, and he says that he doesn't think people are born with empathy. He thinks that they learn it. What do you think about that? Do you think you can learn it, or do you think you're born with it?
I think you learn it too.
Really?
Yes, sir.
I don't know. You want to talk to Brian about it? See what he says?
Sure.
Brian, why do you say you can learn it? Because my son says, I told him he was good at it. How do you learn it? How do you get better at it?
I think you learn it through experiencing things, and the more you experience, the more knowledge you have on how things affect you, and when you understand how something affects you, you have a better idea of how it's going to affect someone else.
So, like, if my son wanted to get better at empathy, do you have any recommendations? I need to do this too, buddy.
That's a difficult question. I think just being kind to people and speaking to people is the best way. Like, you want to maximize the amount of exposure, like the most interactions you have with other people to better understand other people. So just talking to people is the best way to, and trying to understand how they are living their life and understanding that they're just like you. They have their own thoughts and everything else. I think that's the best way of learning empathy.
What do you think about that? You think he's right?
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything else to say before you go back to your TV show that you want to go to? Because I know that you're feeling that right now.
Not really.
Not really? Thanks for coming in here.
You're welcome.
Do you mind shutting the door, please, on your way out? Thank you, buddy. I just wanted to know what he would say, because we've been actively trying to increase our ability to empathize with other people. And I thought it was interesting that you said that it's not something you're born with, because some people feel differently. They think, oh, well, that's just the way I am.
No, I don't believe that for a minute. Because I honestly think I used to be a very unempathetic person. I wasn't very good at understanding other people's viewpoint, and it was something that it was one of the main reasons I forced myself to leave Ireland, was because I had the same friends since I was like 10 years old. I never really had to interact with different people in that way. And leaving kind of forced me to get into those interactions where I had to learn how to be empathetic to make new friends and everything else. So I definitely think it's a learned thing. And the more interactions you have with people, the more you learn.
I appreciate that. Thank you for making me think that through, because I think that's going to change me for the better. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's interesting. I'm very bad at trying to explain things to kids, for example, and I think that's a form of empathy too, being able to try to see it from their point of view, explaining it, and that's something that you would practice as well, just trying to figure out how their minds work.
Yeah, and they're all different. I think you're absolutely right. I try really hard to be able to explain things on my children's level, which is sometimes, that sounded condescending, but it's sometimes more advanced than mine.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get wrapped around the axle about, a due date at work, or, I've got a video I got to get out at a certain time or whatever. And then, they come home with a story about what their friend's favorite color is at school. And I'm like, I don't know my buddy Will's favorite color. Why don't I know that? Probably because we're too busy just doing silly things and we're not actually interacting on a personal level. I don't know. Sorry, this isn't what your podcast is about. I apologize for going here.
Our podcast can be about whatever we want it to be. It's really interesting, because this is education as well. I mean, you can't educate. The best educators are going to be people who are empathetic and can understand the minds of the people they're teaching, and not like knowing that they don't have as deep an understanding of that subject. Like, you need to be able to understand other people's viewpoints in order to teach it.
And there's sometimes, I'm from Alabama, as we've established. Mm-hmm. So sometimes my accent can give away that I'm from the South, and your accent obviously gives away that you're from Ireland. And so
a lot of people think I sound American.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's strange. Like, Irish people say I don't have it incredibly well. Most people say I have an Irish accent, but it's not very strong. But
it's there.
It comes out in the cars. People love that in my Formula One videos, like cars and Mars. I just can't say ARs. Apparently, I sound like a pirate.
And THs.
Oh, you. Yeah.
What happens with THs?
33, 30, 30, 33.
Oh, I like it.
I don't know. I don't know how to say it.
So we recorded a podcast episode recently with a guy that can talk backwards.
Whoa.
And it was interesting because we usually think about letters and stuff like that in terms of the just the alphabet, but he has to think about it in terms of the phonetic alphabet, so he can do the sounds backwards. Mm-hmm. It's really cool. We're going to release that one here soon. It's fun.
That's incredible. Like, is that something that he just had, or is it something he practiced?
Oh yeah, it's all that. We'll have to. You'll just have to listen to it. It's really cool.
Okay.
He's an interesting fellow. But I say all that to say, I think you should keep those sounds in your videos because it's who you are. Because when I do Smarter Every Day, sometimes I will, I don't hide the fact of who I am and where I'm from. Because being from Alabama is a good thing. Because people are like, hey, this dude's from Alabama. Probably not that smart. You know what I mean? I'm probably smarter than him. And whatever he's about to talk about, I can completely understand. And so I use that. Sometimes.
Have you been here before?
I haven't, actually. I need to do that. I need to go.
I think you would like it a lot.
Yeah. So I've heard about the Irish tiger, the economy, right?
The Celtic tiger is what we call it.
The Celtic tiger?
Yeah, not something I experienced, unfortunately.
So are you a heavy industrialized? I mean, in terms of your GDP is primarily dependent on industrial type services?
Now, industrial, yeah. I mean, most of our jobs these days comes from like American companies setting up their headquarters in Ireland for the tax benefits. A lot of our economy before, like when the Celtic tiger crashed, that was it was heavily linked with the American like housing crisis, but so many people in Ireland were employed in construction, and we were just building like estates, like housing estates everywhere, and they're still empty. There's like ghost estates all over Ireland, and that was like a large part of the economy. And a lot of the American firms started like firing people and stuff as well. But like in my hometown, like I sent you the stent.
Yeah.
Like a lot of those companies there here, Medtronic, Boston Scientific.
Which I have that here somewhere. I don't know where it's at. It's in the room. I'm looking at a room full of boxes now. But yeah, thank you for the nitinol stent. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It's really cool.
Got to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
That was a perfect opportunity for you to say excuses, by the way.
I don't know. I know you're a busy man. I don't want to be giving you a hard time. But no, it's a really cool piece of kit. I worked for that company. It was my student placement in college. Like that's a ephemeral artery stent, so it doesn't go in your heart. Like if you see it, it's quite large.
Right.
The coronary artery stents are tiny. I worked in a factory making them too, and you lose so many of them on the factory line. Like they get caught by the static and just fly into the vents and everything. And you're talking about like €1,000 worth of like a little tiny piece of metal just flying into a vent. You have to write like a full document release thing. It's like, what happened? Why did this happen?
Do you create nitinol in the plant?
No. I think for the one I sent you, they're made in Germany.
Oh, okay. So it's nickel and titanium, is that correct?
I think so, yeah. It's a long time since I've done this now, so I think it's definitely nickel alloy, but I'm not sure what the alloying thing is in it. Let me search. It's a really interesting material though. Have you seen how it works?
I have, yeah. Yeah,
it's nickel titanium.
We've done it. It's shape memory alloy basically.
Yeah. So you can set it like they crimp that on at a certain temperature, which allows it to stay in that shape. And then traditionally they use balloons to expand the stent. Mm-hmm. But that can cause damage to the... I don't know if I'm going to... This is probably going to take quite a long time to explain. I don't know if I'm going into too much detail. But the balloon can damage the artery sometimes. And that causes something called restenosis, where the cell wall starts to like grow back, kind of scar in a way. And the nitinol kind of removes a lot of that pressure from the balloon. Well, that's the theory anyways.
It distributes the load, kind of like a washer and a bolt. Is what is kind of what it sounds like to me.
No, it's more that it just self-expands, so it doesn't overexpand. Like the balloons can overexpand sometimes.
Ah,
And so the nitinol just like fits into the right shape. It doesn't like expand. It just kind of fits. Like it just takes the shape of the vein more or less, or the artery.
that's really cool. That sounds like a cool job.
I love the student placement. I didn't like the factory job. Not only do Squarespace make Showmakers possible, but their fantastic service allowed me to create a beautiful website for the Showmakers website. I have been extremely busy lately and had about 2 hours set aside to create the Showmakers website. And that's all I needed with Squarespace. Their intuitive design software and award-winning templates allows you to create a website that is both beautiful and functional really quickly. If you're creating a website for your business or other project, I really recommend you consider making your next move with Squarespace. So head on over to squarespace.com/showmakers for 10% off your first order.
I wanted to talk a bit about Obama, your interview.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, I can imagine. I guess first, like, how did that come up? I guess it was a YouTube initiative, right?
It was, yeah. I was actually, it was a Google News initiative, and so Google asked me if I wanted to participate, and my understanding is, well, it was pretty interesting. I went out to San Bruno to visit for something. I forget what it was. And I was out there, and they said, hey, we've got a little meeting in this room. Do you mind stepping in for a second? I'm like, yeah, completely. So, cool, we're going to need you to do the non-disclosure thing, which we had already done. And so we walked in, and they were like, okay, so here, we're going to talk about, something that might be going on with the White House. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And so they started the conversation, and it wasn't but about, I guess, 3 or 4 minutes into the conversation where they were asking me stuff and all this stuff. And I said, wait a second. And I looked at the person that took me in the room, and I looked at the person on the video conference, and I said, this is an interview. And they said, what? And I was like, you're interviewing me to see if I'd be a good candidate to interview the president. That's what's happening right now. And then they laughed. And I was like, oh, no. Back up. We're going to start over. And I said, I want to tell you why you should let me do this. And then we just had really good conversations after that. And then they apparently there was some kind of process where they selected who they wanted to do it, and they allowed me to. And I'm very, very grateful for that.
And I think I remember you saying, because you did a follow-up video on your channel, I think you remember saying that your questions, basically, you chose them on your own and everything, and just went and asked them?
Yeah, that's how it worked.
That's just sounds so bizarre.
Yeah,
like that.
It was pretty wild. So I did several things. So my main goal there, and actually this is when Matt and I kind of formed our friendship, Matt Whitman, we started talking about what I should do in this situation, because everybody, I talked to people and they were like, yeah, you should really ask him about this because he's doing it wrong or whatever. And I said, I don't think that's the way to do it. I mean, you don't just go to an interview to get someone, I'm going to really get him and show him how it is, that's just not nice. And that's not me. I don't want to do that. And so I read all of his books. So I read all of his books in preparation for the interview. Got to thinking about, what kind of person he was. He's a dad. You just start thinking about the common ground that we had, think about the differences, and said, okay, well, how would I talk to a normal person that shares these things in common, and these things are different? I would want to talk about things that they're interested in. I'd want to talk about things that I'm interested in. And so my goal with that whole interview was not to just really get the answers to the questions, which I was interested in that, obviously, but I wanted to demonstrate that two people that are completely different can have a conversation and be intelligent and respectful and walk away having disagreed on a couple of things and be friends, And that's not something that people are doing now, because we have the ability to mute people on Facebook if they say things that we don't like or whatever. It's just an art that's being lost in culture. And I don't think necessarily just American culture. I think it's just in culture in general. People are losing the ability to have real conversations with real humans and disagree and not lose their minds. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I was, very impressed by that interview for kind of that exact reason, because it was, completely nonpartisan. It took a very different approach from how you traditionally see, how the president is normally talked to and interviewed. One thing that kind of stunned me is that you didn't seem nervous at all.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just how you seemed, but I guess that goes back to the whole talking to him just like another human being thing.
I mean, I'd spent 10 hours with him via audiobook. Like I was familiar with his voice.
Yeah, sure.
I knew a little bit about what made him tick. I'm not going to lie. Did a lot of praying before I got up there. That was a thing. I don't know where you guys stand on that, but that's where I'm at. So, I drew a lot of calm and, just composure from the places that I normally do these things in my private life. And so it was really good. I went in knowing that I had no agenda to make him look bad or strange or try to get anything out of him. And I know I've been on the other side, just like you say, you get a lot of emails. I know that he knows that I'm a guy that's probably from an area of the country that thinks differently than he does. And he was probably thinking, oh boy, here it comes. They're going to set this guy in front of me and he's going to get me. And so as quickly as I could, I tried to establish the fact that, look, I'm not here to make you feel weird or look bad or anything like that. I just want to have a cool conversation with you. And as soon as I established that, there's actually a moment on his face. You can see it. It's so cool. And I didn't know that was going to happen. But in his books, he talked about listening to people. And so when I was able to demonstrate, look, I've listened to all your books, and I know that about you. That was a way to instantly draw a connection that I couldn't have done any other way, because that transcended that room that had Secret Service in it and all these Google people with lights and stuff like that. It took us out of that room, and it took us to like the streets of Chicago where he was growing up. It took us back to Hawaii. Like, hey, I know all that stuff about you, and it's cool. I don't know why people get nervous sometimes. I mean, it's the fear of looking bad or the fear, I don't know. What causes that?
You were live interviewing the president in front of, I don't know how many thousands of people, but sure.
Well, I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
I think some people are just naturally socially
sure, yeah,
anxious in that way. I don't think that's something you have a problem with, Destin.
Well, I think I had done a lot of preparation, and I guess it was a few months later. I went to my kids' school, and they asked me to give like a 10-minute thing at the beginning of the school day to send the kids off to class. They have they have assembly, and then after the assembly they run off. And I was more nervous for that, I think, than the presidential interview, because I knew that all these social interactions that my children had were kind of at stake here. That my dad could say something strange and it could make my kids, make my friends make fun of me. And I felt like I had a lot more on the line at that point. With the president, it was just the intent to teach people how to have disagreements, talk about the cool things. I didn't throw him softballs. There were a couple questions in there like, hey, you talked about hope and change and bringing people together, but here we are, several years later, and it feels like people don't like each other. Why is that? And so, but we talked through that, and then the point of the question wasn't to like get him. It was to actually ask the question, and he hit the nail on the head. He said, look, some people are only watching Fox News. Some people are only doing this. And so like his answer was fantastic, and it's something I hadn't considered. People are in echo chambers of their own making. And so
that's like very much in the zeitgeist at the moment of this idea of echo chambers.
He nailed it. He nailed that question. And like asking the question was, the purpose of asking the question was to understand the answer. And he helped me do that. That's how conversations work. And so I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. And there was actually a little give and take. What's so interesting is at one moment I had said a couple of things to like give him an out. I forget what it was, but later on in the conversation, I started stuttering about something, and he jumped in and gave me an out. It was cool because it was like a back and forth. We were helping each other. It was pretty enjoyable.
I know we probably want to start wrapping it up, but we were both interested to hear what your favorite video that you have done is.
So one that meant the most to me, I think, or one of the videos that meant the most to me was the why you didn't die at birth. Was very, very interesting to me because it goes into the change of your body, performing something similar to respiration in a liquid environment in your mother's womb to a couple of seconds later, you're breathing air. And as an engineer, that's a plumbing problem that has to be solved. And it was really interesting to try to figure that out through the birth of one of my kids. Mm-hmm. And so that was really neat because I didn't know anything. Like when I'm asking those questions in that video and I go to the doctor's house, it's pretty funny. He's a friend of mine, Dr. Mitch Schuster, and he's in there playing guitar. I was like, hey, I really like that you play guitar. Can you just play guitar and I'll just walk in? And it's the most awkward transition ever, but I love it. I love it because it's all the things I like about him. But anyway, I asked him a question. He's like, yeah, it's the foramen ovale and the ductus arteriosus. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, completely. Had no idea what he was talking about. Went back, researched it, and then I got to experience it with my, I got to hear their heart beating. And it's pretty interesting because the heart beats a little strangely initially because the foramen ovale is slapping shut. So the fluid flow is completely different. It's really neat. Anyway, I like that one. I think Prince Rupert's Drop is where I figured out how to make videos. For me, I was trying to listen to all the input from people like YouTube that says you got to hit a schedule and you got to do this or blah blah blah, and I think Prince Rupert's Drop was the first one where I said, forget everything everyone's telling me. I'm going to do what I think is right, which is make a very high quality video, and I'll upload it when I feel is done. And I went like a month and a half before uploading that video because it was, at the bare, it was right at the edge of what my computer could do at the time, and that was the moment where I was like, hey, here you go, internet. This is this thing I made. And it was this beautiful journey of me trying to learn something. And I uploaded it, and it just felt right. And so that changed. I think Smarter Every Day before that and after that were two completely different things. I think Prince Rupert's Drop was, as far as format and understanding how I like to learn and communicate that information, it's probably the best. But like for me emotionally, and like as a dad and something that matters to me more than all the rest was probably Why You Didn't Die at Birth.
My favorite, or it might be because it's underappreciated, but I really enjoyed the video of the diving between the continents one in Iceland.
I'm actually looking at a picture of my wife in Iceland right now. It's my desktop background. And I thought about saying that one because it's, it speaks to our relationship, I think.
Well, it's just you went to such a unique place that like, most people probably don't realize that a place like that exists, and it was a just very calming video intertwined with some, very educational explanations, and it only has 500,000 views, which of course is a lot, but your most recent Prince Rupert's Drop one has 10 times that. It was just very underappreciated. Yeah,
I'm cool with it. Ultimately you can't judge your success on number of eyeballs that experience the thing that you made. I mean, like if you make the video and it's good and you learned from it, that's all that really matters. When people find it, they'll enjoy it. But that's actually why I reached out to Matt to begin with, because he was making videos and not many people were watching them, but I could see how good they were. And so I called him. I was like, hey man, I want to interact with you. And I didn't come out and say it, but it was like, I want to be your friend. And he had no idea who I was. He didn't care. He's like, yeah, okay. This was on Twitter. He's like, yeah, I'll get back to you. And I was like, no, dude, really. I want to talk. And so finally, when we got each other on the phone, we talked for like 2 hours, and we're like, yeah, we were birds of a feather. It's really cool. And so it's really strange because he makes very good content, but it's order of magnitude smaller than Smarter Every Day. But we see eye to eye, and he doesn't feel any less successful than I do.
I think I initially reached out to Brian to because we did a video together way back in May, which for us is like a lifetime ago because we've grown so much since then.
Yeah, it wasn't a viable career for me back then. Like I wasn't making any money. I was like on the last legs of my savings. I had to move back to Ireland at that point because I'd run out of money.
Well, I had seen Brian Real Engineering on I'm pretty sure Reddit, where I initially saw it, and I saw these really like high production value videos on a channel that had maybe 2,000 or 3,000 subscribers at the time, and I had about the same amount, but the videos that I were making were basically glorified PowerPoints. And so I don't know, I guess we got together, and it just happened that the video that we collaborated on went viral. And so the cool thing is that we both kind of got our start at working with each other.
Like it literally, you can see the inflection point on our growth graph at the point of the collaboration, which is crazy because it's like this tiny little trickle of subscribers, and then that point where we collaborated, it just like started booming. It's crazy.
Well, I went from like 5,000 subscribers at the beginning of May to, I think it was I hit 100,000 early June. So that was a exciting month.
I think that speaks to the ability of people to be able to better each other, right? Not just logistically and, doing the cross-pollination subscriber thing, but it's, sometimes we're better when we work with other people.
Definitely. I think one of the things people don't talk about either, it obviously wouldn't be as big of a factor for you as you have your family and work as well. But YouTube, in the way we do it, is quite lonely. Like, it's quite isolating. And having someone else who can keep you accountable almost, who you're kind of like working alongside, so it's not like, kind of almost like a colleague, is incredibly valuable. Yeah. And I think that a lot, that's what Sam has been for me since our collaboration. We've kind of spoken fairly regularly since then and kind of talked about how things are going and kind of figured out the whole YouTube thing together.
I think it was Philip who runs Kirkgazette. I think he told me, like, when I was just kind of getting popular, like the whole growth period kind of sucks because you're not really making, super stable money. You're working really hard, like a full-time job, and you're working alone. But it's the kind of path that you need to take if you want to get to that, to that point where it's more stable.
Patreon is a game changer. Are you guys on Patreon? Yeah, I support you, Brian, on Patreon, right?
I believe yes.
Well, we've both been fairly, I guess, lucky in the context that we've made for advertisements, which has really helped out with the growth.
Absolutely. I think just in general, the community is incredible. Like, people just reach out so easy. Like, even just from my start, I never expected you to actually reply to that email. I was expecting it to be very much another one of these. But I think you think differently, obviously. But I mean, since then, Henry from Minute Physics reached out of the blue. We've spoken to Philip from, I'm going to say in a nutshell, I'm not even going to try and pronounce Kyrgyzakt. I just tried to pronounce it. It's incredible. I love it. It's such a nice community.
I just looked at, I'm not supporting you on Patreon. I thought I was. I'm going to change that right now. Exactly like all the listeners should. They should also support you on Patreon. I mean, like, do you have your podcast on Patreon?
Not yet, because we haven't launched it yet. So it's kind of,
you got to do that, man. We did this thing. We did this silly thing to try to get support on Patreon for our podcast, just to be funny, called the 50/50. Can I walk you through the 50/50 right now?
Absolutely.
All right. So first of all, the first mistake we made is we purchased the URL the5050.com, which cost a ridiculous amount of money. So just go to the5050.com.
Right now?
Yeah, do it. This is the dumbest way to try to support a podcast.
Is it spelled 50, like literally 50/50 with
you pick
letters?
Out how you want to do it. We bought them both. This is how you do not support your podcast. So the 50/50 is a silly attempt to fund our podcast. And so what we did is we said, please don't play the 50/50. You pick one of the two links below. One will take you to our Patreon where you're obligated to support, or the other one will take you to the worst video you've ever seen on the internet. We thought that it would, like, people would be curious, so they would, like, at least land on the Patreon page and support. It didn't work.
I'm on like a Chinese website. How do you spell it? I'm
the
confused.
50-50.
Oh, the. Okay, I'm not putting the in.
Oh, yeah. So I think
There you go.
I would encourage you to do Patreon for your podcast. But just don't do it the way we did, because it did not work, because we were too honest about how bad the video is on the 50-50. So people didn't go to it. Have you played, Sam?
I got the Patreon.
Good for you. You won.
I am terrible at multitasking and reading, so
Can you
Click the button.
pick one of those two at the bottom? That's all you got to know.
that's all I have to do. Okay.
That's all you have to do.
You lost the 50-50. Oh, no. What is this? I'm scared.
You lost. You have to. So the
So
way
the
we
zebra. The zebra. Oh, no.
don't tell
oh,
everybody
no.
don't tell everybody what you're seeing. Fast forward. The moment you want to watch in the video is starting at 1 minute. 1 minute flat. That's where you want to start the video.
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm not watching this. I'm not watching this. Oh, boy.
You're an awful person.
Isn't that bad? Okay, so the way we told people to do the video, we're like, go to the 50-50, and then if you lose, you have to watch an awful video, and then it's your moral obligation to support on Patreon, which you're not morally obligated because I forced you into it. In fact, I will support you on Patreon. But this
Do I
this
not
was
support you on Patreon? I definitely have. I'm not. I think I support you on Patreon.
I think you do.
I definitely did at one point, but then I think when I was running out of money, I had to take it away. But now I'll have to fix that as well.
That's a really good reason to not support people.
Yeah, starting a business is fun.
Yeah, you also have really
terrifying.
good shirts, by the way. I noticed your shirts. That's pretty good.
They started. People have started getting them now. It's great. It's a bizarre thing. Like I was wearing my own logo around the place. It's like I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah, I
feels
usually don't
weird.
wear Smarter. I wear Smarter Everyday shirts to sleep in because they're the most comfortable shirts in the world. But I don't wear my
Are
own shirt.
you
generally.
are you with the FTBA?
No, I'm not. No, I paid.
Oh, you print your own too, don't you? You have like a screen printer.
I paid a local guy because I want local people to get money. Not that I don't want Hank Green to get money, but I want to, I want to support the local economy if I can. So
Yeah,
Well, that's exactly what
noble.
Hank Green does.
yeah, that's good. That's good. So what I think you need to do is come up with a way to try to get people interested in your Patreon, which might be something as simple as having a guest on to talk about it. That might work. And then you could leave a link to your Patreon in the show notes, and then people could go check that out if they want. That way they don't have to go play the5050.com or the equivalent of whatever you would have on your podcast.
But yeah, Destin, thank you very much for coming on to our show. It means a whole lot to us that you'd take the time out of your busy schedule to give us a little boost in the start of this podcast. And yes, I wish you luck with everything you're doing at the moment.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. You guys taught me a lot. It's fun. Thank you.
And go listen to No Dumb Questions.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Matt appreciates that as well.
I've listened
good
to
podcast.
it. I've listened
Yeah,
to the
it's a
first
very
two
good
episodes.
podcast.
It's very, very good.
Oh, it's simple. We're simple people. So I really appreciate that. It was fun. It's fun coming on here, and maybe we do it again sometime.